And our good friend, Jos Schmitt, has joined us from Neo. Guys, welcome, sir. How are you?
Very well, very well. Great to be with you.
Thanks for coming back once again. It's been a month or two since Jos has been here, so we're going to touch a little bit on the Neo exchange. We're going to touch a little bit on the Neo N book, which I don't think we talked about too much the last time you were here. So obviously we've gone public since the last time that you were on the show, so we're outside of the TraderTV.LIVE family. So maybe we can start with a little overview of the Neo exchange and maybe a little introduction for yourself.
Sure. Neo Exchange, pretty new exchange, I would say, in Canada. We have been operating now for a little bit more than 4 years. We trade every Canadian listed security, whether it's listed on the TSX, the TSXV, the CSC, or Neo. We do listings, and we have our own listings. So where the Neo Exchange, if you want, is really the venue where the company went public, or the exchange traded fund. And we have market data services. So those are the three core services we have as an exchange, and I'll come back to a few data points later on. And we also developed, maybe a little bit less relevant over here, but a platform to distribute other financial assets that are not available on the stock exchange. And we're going to come with a very big announcement around that platform towards the end of this month. Today it's distributing mutual funds, but at the end of this month we're going to make some other assets available on it. So that is going to be a very exciting development, and a good example of who we are and what we do. So for us, it's all about continuously innovating, looking at what are the issues, what are the challenges in the capital markets here in Canada, and how can we make it better, and we leverage innovation for that. We are a fierce competitor, so we will always make sure that people know that we are there to compete with them. And last but not least, our philosophy is to always test whatever we do, whether it is as an exchange level, whether it is from the perspective of that new platform I mentioned. How can we do all of this, or what can we do to give the long-term investor, the participants in the market that really provide liquidity, or for that matter, the issuers, a better experience, so that their activity on the exchange or in the capital markets overall becomes more successful than as we see it in the world today. So that is the philosophy behind Neo.
You mentioned innovation. I want to start there. Innovation in the sense that Neo has gone to great lengths to protect the retail side, protect the retail trader, and give them not necessarily an advantage, but kind of level the playing field when it comes to HFTs, high frequency traders. Maybe touch a little bit on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was that was really part of our first offering when we came with the trading, and that we started really in July 2015. And what we do over there is that we have a number of books, and in all of those books we have integrated a couple of mechanisms that are supporting the retail investor, the long-term investor, not only retail, the long-term investor, or the liquidity provider that is really adding value to the market. And this is not about eliminating high-frequency traders. This is not us saying high-frequency traders don't add value, but what we are seeking to do is to curb or eliminate all those behaviors and all those strategies that are unfair, where they take advantage of their speed. And a couple of examples of what we do is we leverage speed bump, we leverage a different way of prioritizing orders in our matching model. We also give the ability in one of our books, I'll come back to that, to make sure that your orders cannot be identified. So we don't provide a market by order, but only a market by price. So your orders are all aggregated with other parties behind the price. All kinds of mechanisms that are always seeking to, as you said it very correctly, not to create an advantage for someone, but to level the playing field versus those who had an advantage or are, in fact, favored by other exchanges, because we know that many other exchanges and marketplaces are very focused on enabling them and even further creating a differentiation. And what have we achieved so far? I was talking about it, on the way over with my colleague Alex over here, and Today, this month is showing again growth. We represent now, excluding blocks. Blocks are trades that are reported to marketplaces or exchanges, but we represent now about 8.5% of all volume traded in Canada. And we started this year at 6. We started the year before, I'm looking at Alex, around 4.5, 5. Steadily we keep seeing progress, and I think what makes us successful is that level the playing field concept that we implemented, and that I believe is very beneficial, yes, to retail investors, but also to institutional investors and to liquidity providers like your own community, that want to participate, provide liquidity, and have a fair chance to have access to incoming orders.
Fantastic. Now, NeoN, the inverted book that we offer. Alex and Jos brought along some visuals so we can have a look at. You were mentioning some fantastic growth through not only through this year but over the past year. We can have a look at some of that on these charts.
Yeah, these slides, or this slide, I should probably say, gives you a good view of our growth. And if you look at the left side, so that is what we call our market share ex-cross, so excluding the blocks.
Right.
And the dark yellow one that you see in there is the all-in figure, and you see that in September it was touching 8%, and we expect that now to for the period. The dates here are all January, but I can tell you that the last piece at the last data point that you have is September, so it's at about 8%. In October we see going a bit higher than that. What is very noticeable in there, and that we would like to attract your attention to, is look at our market share in CSE and TSXV listed securities. Those are the dotted ones, the small dots and the larger dashes, where we are at 12%.
Wow.
And I think this is a market that many of people part of your organization, many of your traders are definitely leveraging, are present in. And it also tells us, when you look at the TSX one, which is a yellow one, big opportunities over there that are available. Because why have we seen that growth? Well, because we level the playing field. It gives a better opportunity to participate. We see a lot of your participation, and by the way, thank you. Thank you
Our
to you
pleasure.
and your traders. But what you achieve today in CSC and TSXV listed securities, it's also available to you in the TSX space.
Yes.
And people just have to try it.
Yeah. Just to take a step back really quick, just wanted to make sure everybody understands, the inverted model, obviously a paid model versus the maker model where you're getting a rebate. So the inverted, you're going to have to pay, but you're going to get that first look, which is crucial in the ideas that you were just mentioning. Let's shift on to the next slide here, and we can show some really interesting data as well.
If you look at the next one, because the figures I was giving you earlier, just to be very clear, that was across all our books. So now we're going to zoom in on NeoN specifically with this slide, and this is going to give you the key characteristics. So yes, you're absolutely right. It's an inverted market, and you see the fee model at the bottom, and how it compares to other inverted markets in Canada. You got the CSE, you got Alpha, you got Nasdaq CX2, and you got Omega. And what you will see with us is that we tried to find the perfect combination. Like, everyone keeps working and changing their fees, but what we realized is that you need to find that right combination that is, yes, going to attract that retail flow, but at the same time is making it possible for you as a liquidity provider to post and not pay a price that is going to make it impossible to make money. And we believe we kind of found the sweet spot, and that starts to translate itself in the evolution of our market share. Like NeoN today, when you look at the inverted markets, is the second most active one. This month, NeoN is probably tracking around 4.5% of the overall market, so it's 4.5 of the 8 that I mentioned earlier, and again with a lot of strength in in CSE and TSXV listed securities, and I think it's because we found that right balance. And you will also notice when you look at the fees that the spread that we take, the difference between the rebate and what is paid is very small. So we're not trying to maximize our revenue. We're trying to find a model that really works both for the liquidity taker, whether it's retail or institutional, the liquidity provider, whether it is a day trader,
Yep.
or whether it is another form of liquidity provider that can be client orders from other dealers and so on. It was very interesting to see when Omega a couple of months ago did a big fee change, and you will see that their rebates are quite high to attract flow, but what you have to pay to post is very high also.
Exactly.
And we were observing that and thinking about, should we or should we not take action over here? I think there's also a little bit of something of, we got to calm this down. There's too many price changes going on and people can't keep up with it. But we saw that market participants were testing the market again. We saw a pickup in the market and then it dropped suddenly.
Interesting.
And I think there was a clear realization, what I believe is at the level of liquidity providers, that the amount you had to pay to post was too high. And that makes it very difficult to be successful as a liquidity provider. But we are now number 2 in inverted markets. And what's also very interesting, catching up on number 1, they seem to be losing some market share again, which is Alpha. And I think that there's a number of reasons that are probably a lengthy debate why that is. I think there's some fundamental flaws with the model over there, which is really built for the HFT community. And I think that that fee structure that we have, combined with a model that is really there to the benefit of the long-term investor and the real liquidity provider, is what allowing that growth of NEO-N. And just to cover for 2 minutes the key characteristics of NEO-N. So yes,
Please.
Inverted,
Yep.
that is item number 1. 2, if an HFT wants to take liquidity in that book, so maybe leverage the fee structure and take liquidity, we slow them down. There's a speed bump.
Yep.
So the speed advantage that they typically have on other marketplaces is not there, and that is good to protect real liquidity providers. 3, when you post an order in our book and you're sitting next to an HFT who has a tendency to be there a little bit faster than you, well, it doesn't matter, because you will still trade ahead of them, because
Exactly.
we give priority to long-term investors, and that includes here the day trading community. So your probability to trade is very high when you post on NEO-N, and you are protected from people who have a speed advantage and who want to take your liquidity away from you, and they have better information than you have.
Now, I want to make sure we get to the next slide because it's interesting, some individual names. But before we do that, Sean has a question.
Hey Jos, great to see you again
Hey.
today, and thank you once again, obviously, for coming in. You did touch on one key point there that I think we brushed over maybe a little too quickly, and that was the how you can be dedicated a long-term investor. I think there's some benefits to our traders, especially here at Day Trade the World, and maybe others that are viewing this, as to why they need to become a part of the NEO exchange. So can you explain what exactly a long-term investor is and how that can benefit some traders like us?
Yeah, so what we did when we designed the entire NEO exchange is that, again, one of the core principles behind this was to have a fair market, a level playing field for all the investors. And we all know very well that a category of market participants, the high frequency trader community, has developed means, technologies, leveraging high-speed connectivity, whether it is, by how do you call it, faster lines,
Yes.
or whether it is by broadcasting, or now by laser technology, to always get a few milliseconds faster access to information, or be able to put orders in
Right.
faster. And what we said, well, if they are there and they provide quality liquidity and they can do that in a fair way, you're welcome, and you can add a lot of value. And we have, high frequency traders active on our market, but what we don't have is high frequency traders leveraging that technology to take advantage of other participants. And how we did that is that every trader ID, every trader that is working on our market, participating to our market, is classified. And they're either classified as what we call a latency sensitive trader, I think it's another way to say the same thing, or they are classified as retail or other. To be very clear, the day trading community is classified in other. And retail and other, there's no distinction between the two, we just know who they are. But what we do with the latency sensitive traders, or the HFTs, so we identify them and then we subject them to that speed bump.
Right.
So we take that speed advantage away. The second thing we do is, if we have an LST order sitting in our book at the same price as an order of one of the other categories, well, the other ones will trade ahead of them.
Right.
Even if he came in 1 millisecond, or for that matter 1 minute, or for that matter 1 hour before the long-term investor was in. And what is an LST? So yes, you know, the best way to look at it is a high frequency trader, but we have some you know, additional elements that we take into account of that, of course. That is, it's typically an HFT that has direct access to our market and has put in place the entire infrastructure that is focused on creating a speed advantage. And that we take away. So again, to come back to Sean's point, what does that mean for the day trading community over here, and what does it mean for any retail investor? What does it mean for any institutional investor? Well, if you post an order on NEO, the probability that you get taken out, or your time to fill, which is a typical metric terminology that we use in the trading world, is going to be shorter than on other marketplaces. When you are looking at the market and the market is evolving, and you have an HFT that is trying to take you out, you know that you have a little bit of time to potentially look at adjusting your quote. So we protect the liquidity provider, and at the same time we make sure that the people who post have priority over those who can post faster than them. And that is really what it comes down to.
There we go. Let's have a look at the next graphic here. Some individual names that NEO N is involved in. Guys, if we can throw that up so we can have a look. There we go.
Yeah, so this shows you our activity, and this is specifically NEO N, to be very clear, in various listed securities. And as you can see, there's 4 listing venues in Canada now, and I'm going to start. Maybe go to the next slide first. I'm going to start on the far right. We lost the slide over here.
Yeah, if we can go back 2 there, guys. I think it was.
Yeah, there we are. That is perfect. So I'm going to start to the top right, TSXV listed securities, and there you will see a number of quite actively traded securities on the TSXV, and look at the figures. Like, this is the NEO N book only, so this does not include our classic book, NEO L. It doesn't include our dark book, NEO N only, and we see market shares that are getting extremely close to 20% in quite some actively traded securities. So clearly there is a number of market participants who are starting to see what value that this book can bring, and are really starting to take advantage of it. And if you take the diagonal and you go down to the CSE listed securities, so the bottom left, you will see similar information. There too we are hitting towards 20% in some of the most active securities, and we all know the active ones, the pumps and the Agra Flora and the
halos of
and,
the world.
So you see substantial activity in those books. I think that there's room for much more. I think there's still a lot of people who don't realize all the benefits of NEO N, who don't realize the amount of flow, quality flow that comes in to take liquidity, and where you can have those priorities. When you also look at those slides, that one slide, and maybe pull it back one last time, I also would like to bring to your attention the 2 other boxes that were in there.
Yeah, if we can go back to that graphic, guys, real quick. There we go.
So now I'm going to go top left, TSX. Well, look at the TSX. In some securities, quite interesting, the more low value securities, RNX, Lydia, what we see over there is market shares that start to look again, only NEO-N, 10%, 15%, but that can also be achieved in the much more active ones. Think about the Auroras. You know, we do 5% over there in the month of September. I expect it to go up this month. But you look at Encana, yeah, that's the fourth one that you see over there, 4%. But those same benefits are there for those securities. And I think that what NEO is doing for those securities that you know have always been considered as, you know, this is a place that is reserved for the high frequency trading community. No, we created a marketplace where you as members of a day trading community who are providing very reliable liquidity to the market, is a place where you have a fair chance to also participate in those very actively traded securities, those securities that are really, you know, limited almost by the way that other markets are working to the HFT community. Yeah. Well, we make it available to everyone. And then the last element, we don't need to bring the slide back, on the bottom right, it was a NEO listed. This was, by the way, not only NEO-N, that was all in, because these securities are traded you know, mainly on NEO. MatchNow provides access also to them, but this is mainly on NEO. There the message is, look at some of the opportunities, and Sean gave the example of Halo earlier. Halo today, in volume traded, and I looked at the figures over September, and you put that in the world of CSC listed securities. So you take all the CSC listed securities, you rank them by volume traded in September, you add Halo to it, and Halo is the 8th most actively traded security.
There you go.
And think about it, the ones that are ahead of them are typically securities with a value of below a cent or below 10 cents. So this is becoming one of the most actively traded securities in Canada, and it has lots of opportunity, lots of potential. Sean said quite volatile, yeah. So big opportunities.
Speaking of NEO listed, we'll wrap things up with a look at the IPO scene. We had a visual for that. If we can jump to that one real quick, guys, we'll touch on some, maybe touch on some of the qualities that you know, NEO offers to companies that want to go public.
Yeah. So the approach that we took from a listings perspective, and I think that's always very important to keep in the back of your mind, that is that we took the decision at NEO that we would only list companies that are senior companies, as we define it. In other words, we don't list venture companies. TSXV is a venture exchange, CSC is a venture exchange, TSX is a senior exchange. So we are directly competing with the TSX, and that means that when you're listed on NEO, the companies that are listed on NEO have to comply with requirements and standards that are substantially superior than what you see on a venture exchange. It doesn't mean you got more trading, it just means that you know that those are companies that are subject to stringent requirements. Two, a very important element that we focus on a lot is liquidity. How do we make sure that we maximize liquidity in those securities? And that's important for the entire day trading community also. We do that by having really reinvigorated the concept of real designated market makers, you know, committed to a security, committed to an exchange. But we also help issuers by getting access, and that injects liquidity in our market to other core environments where they can find liquidity if they don't list somewhere else. And that is, for example, OTC markets in the US, that is, for example, the Frankfurt Exchange in Europe, brings in a lot of retail flow out of those two regions. Something else we did that's very important, that is our market data is available at no cost. So when you look at NEO listed, you don't pay for it. And again, it's to, you know, make sure there's awareness. We have big awareness programs. We're going to launch, we're going to start here in Toronto. You'll see it in the part and other places very soon. A new campaign, a new marketing campaign that is going to focus on what we're doing in that listing space and to help create awareness about our investors. So we're really looking at our investors as issuers, we're looking at our issuers as partners with whom we work together to give them the best possible experience, the best possible access to investor, and help them to be successful, because we truly believe that their success is our success. And you know, of course, when you are a monopoly and there's no one else competing with you, you don't really care so much about your issuers. Well, now there is competition, and we're going to differentiate ourselves by what I said at the beginning: innovation, service, and doing what's right for the issuer and the investor.
A great way to wrap things up. Jos Schmitt from the NEO Exchange. Thank you, sir. Always a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Come back and see us again. Let's head over, guys, and get an update on the European close. Here's